Hello and welcome to the Coaching Podcast, Coaching for Success in Sport and Business. Your host is Emma Doyle, the energy and high performance under pressure coach who is a world leader in unleashing human potential. Buckle up for this high octane session. Let 'em have it, coach.
G'day everybody and welcome to the Coaching Podcast. My name's Emma Doyle and I'm super excited. You can probably hear it in my voice. I get to chat about coaching with Simon Wheatley. He's a friend, fellow speaker. We met 10 years ago, Simon. Oh my goodness.
Where was the ITF?
In Mexico, where it was
Oh my God.
all you can eat and all you can drink. Say no more. We got to know each other. Simon Wheatley is an international coach and he's a player development consultant. Formerly, he was the LTA Performance Coach Education Manager, responsible for the development of performance coaches across British tennis. Author of 2 books, 3 coaching qualifications, over 50 CPD workshops. Anyway, blah, 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 blah. I could go on, Simon. I'll stop there. Welcome to the Coaching Podcast, mate.
Well, thank you, Emma. It's been an honor to be invited, and thank you for listening to me and speaking with me, because it's always nice when people ask. And yeah, it's been too long. We haven't seen each other with COVID and your role changing and my role changing. We've been passing ships in the night, so I hope that we can be face to face soon and have a cold beer together. That'll be fun.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, look, let's kick it off with, of course, the Vegemite question.
Oh, I love it. I absolutely love it. I could have mine on everything. It's since I was a kid. I've always loved it. It's not like something I found when I was older. Now, one thing I didn't know was, did you steal it from us and change it to Vegemite? Or did we steal it from you and then change it to Marmite? I'm not sure. But anyway, it's good.
I'm not sure either. Well, because you answered that way, of course, the follow-up question is your best coaching moment and what might be a lesson or two.
When I was posed this question before, I thought long and hard about it, because there's been many, many coaching moments and leadership moments and management moments in my career where I've been touched or I've been inspired and I've been humbled. So to find one was difficult. I think the answer I would give is, one of the things that I know that I've been able to do in my career is to inspire people to be better than what they were, to make them realize that you're not all that you can be, and you can be a better coach in what you do. And that was pretty much my role at the LTA. I did it with our staff, which was quite an extensive group of performance education staff and the tutor workforce, but also with the coaches themselves. And I would often deliver a lot of workshops, symposiums, conferences, mentoring, tutoring. And one of the things that always really knocked me for six is just the amount of gratitude that people had for their exposure to me or the content that I'd written. And I don't say that from an arrogant perspective. I say it because I'm actually humbled by it. It was, and I'll tell you a story that happened to me really recently. There was a female that had taken part, and she was from the Middle East, I think, and she said she's working in an academy and it's mainly male dominated, and she said she really finds it hard to be heard and to be respected and to have a credible voice within the team. She did my 12-week program, and with the 12-week program, by the way, you know how fast I speak. It's like a 12-month program in 12 hours. It's just unbelievably packed. I think it's like 1,500 slides and video clips and stuff. It's nuts, really, how I did it in 12 weeks. But she said to me that it was the most valuable education she ever received. She felt it was more impactful than all her qualifications she's ever done. She said it was practical and real. She went, not only do I feel more confident as a coach now, I'm able to do things and improve players faster than my peers and colleagues can do, who are men. And she said, I feel so confident now in front of the parents that I can improve all their strokes and tactics, that I put my prices up and I'm charging more money and I'm earning more money for my family. And I thought, yes, that's how you make people better. That's how you improve people. You make them more competent. You don't just tell them that they're great and they're fine the way they are, that you actually help them to be better. And that was a big step change. And I've had it my whole career. It's like, I was in Warsaw last weekend and the more coaches said, wow, you've inspired me. I'm completely changing the way I'm going to coach now little kids. And then I had it also in America. I was in Houston, the River Oaks Tennis Club, and a gentleman, I won't say his name for anonymous reasons. And he came up to me and he said, Simon, I've been following your work. I've flown in to the workshop. It's taken me like a 3-hour flight to come and see you. I've been following your work for years. And it's really emotional, because he said to me, like, I was in a bad place. I was in the finance world and I didn't want to do it. I was following your work. My son's played, and I decided to become a coach because of you. It's like, I didn't know this. I never met this guy before, a complete stranger. So I decided to become a coach. I'm loving what I do. I'm way more relaxed. I'm a better husband, better father. And I just want to say thank you. And there's these 2 strangers in this tennis club in Houston. It's like 40 degrees, sweating hell. He's opening, people are opening up these stories to me, and I just think, well, I just talk about tennis and coaching and relationships and management and leadership, but it really makes a difference with people. So I guess that's probably it's an iteration of the same story from different people. That's probably my leadership moment and coaching moment that's had the biggest impact on me, because it always leaves me flabbergasted on just what we can do for people as educators and as leaders. So long story, but
No, I
that's
love
probably
it.
what's wrong.
Yeah, we love stories on the show. And what it reminded me of is this concept of work-life integration rather than work-life balance. You know, you talk about tennis is just the vehicle, but you talk about relationships, better father, better, better maybe in their partnership at home. That's what coaching can do. I really, it transcends the boundaries of a rectangle with white lines and some stupid object between two people.
Yeah.
So thank you for sharing that. What about on the flip side? Can you think of a coaching moment that didn't go so well?
I think probably for me, being really open and honest, is I was working at the LTA for 14 years and I was in a leadership position there, right? I was the performance education manager, but essentially it was leading the development of content. And one of the things that was very difficult is that the way that my redundancy was actually handled at the time was actually really not good. And it was the worst kind of, I would say coaching, it was the worst professional moment in my career. That's probably a better way of summing it up. Because look, if you've given 14 years to a company and I had to work throughout the whole of COVID, whereas a lot of my colleagues, 85% of the staff in the organization I was working in, were put on furlough. They were told to stay at home, not work, and they would still be paid 80% of their salary. Now, that didn't happen to me. I was told that I was business critical and essential to continue in my role throughout COVID in order to stay and educate coaches digitally online because I wanted to stay at home. So I worked really hard through COVID. At the time, I had a baby as well, and and that was tough being a dad. And I perhaps would have been quite nice to have a bit more time off to be at home and help my partner. But anyway, it wasn't to be, and I worked, and I was grateful for that because I like to work. And then when we came out of COVID, I was told that your services are no longer required, and that was tough. That was tough for me because I loved my job. I was part of the furniture of British tennis, and so it was probably the worst coaching moment and worst professional moment to do with coaching, because I was delivering courses, writing content, developing online content. I was mentoring people throughout the courses, helping the tutors. I was involved in projects across the business, and all of a sudden being told, look, we need to let you go because we need to save money. And of course, now they're taking more staff on and they're making more money because Wimbledon's back. And you think, well, perhaps that was a bit short-termist. And I find that very difficult. I had a baby that was 9 months old. I had no job, and I couldn't travel because travel restrictions were still in place. So I'm a coach educator that wasn't going to be employed by the company that employed me. Didn't have any work. There was no coach education centres that would have used me, and I couldn't travel abroad to do anything. So that's a bit of a squeaky bum moment, and I learned a lot in that period, Emma. But it wasn't. I won't romanticize it. It wasn't fun. And it knocked me for six. And look, I've bounced back and I'm busier than ever. I'm currently working with over 17 tennis federations in the last 12 months. And I feel very lucky that people are picking up the phone and wanting to use my expertise. And so it's gone right for me, but that was a tough time. It was definitely the worst moment in my professional career.
But great to hear about the silver lining once you do get through it. Tough times don't last, tough people do, as they say.
Oh, wow. That's nice.
So thank you for sharing that. And I mean, really, the sliding doors question is the next question. That sounds like a pretty pivotal sliding door moment as well. But is there another one in your life that you could share?
Oh, yeah, definitely. Because I think two really quick ones. The first one was going to university or not. I didn't come from a very wealthy family. We came from a very working class family. My dad was a coach driver. We were real kind of bottom of the ladder kind of family. But I was the first person in my family to ever be offered the chance to go to university and be accepted. But I didn't know if I could go. My parents certainly couldn't afford to help me. I knew that I had to take out a full student loan, and with that, when you're an 18-year-old kid, it's like, do I really want that debt hanging over my head? And I didn't want it. And I was really encouraged by a lot of people, like, Simon, it's going to really be the making of you. And I wasn't sure. I was offered to work as a removal worker. I was doing that between 16 and 18, moving people's houses. I was a big guy. I could do that. And I loved the camaraderie and banter between the men. It was something. I grew up in a little working class town, and everyone really ripped each other all the time. It was brutal, but it really made you. And I thought, well, I could stay there. It's good cash. Back then, it was cash in hands type work. This was over 23 years ago. So I thought, well, do I go or do I not? And in the end, it was my old PE teacher, Phil Paulton, good friend still, that said to me, look, I went to Cheltenham University. It's a great PE teaching college. You should go. It's a great town. It's a lovely spa town right in the middle of the Cotswolds, in the middle of England, as you probably know. And I went, and Emma, I'm still living here today. I haven't moved my home location from that town. I'm still living in my university town. I love it. If I hadn't have done that, I wouldn't have been involved in coaching at university. I wouldn't have been involved in the tennis team, where all my best friends now are still best friends. I'm the people I met in my tennis team, I was best man for at their wedding, best mates for now. And they're all the same people. And not only that, I met my first boss doing county training, who then left and then took me with him to the LTA. So I then wouldn't have met him, which means I wouldn't have gone into the LTA, and I wouldn't have been a coach educator. And it really scares me to think that if I would have made the wrong decision, I don't think I'd be sat on this podcast talking to you.
Talk about a blow-on effect. I love that. Oh,
yeah, it's amazing how. And I also think, and sorry, I said two stories. The other one was Valencia. Now, we met in Mexico, which I think was 13, but I actually did my first ITF conference in Valencia, which I think was 2009, and that was the first time I'd done an international presentation. Scared, like every coach education director from all federations are there, and they come to watch you. Who's little young Simon Wheatley, this British guy, talking about under 10 serve, and no one had really talked about the kids serve. You'd have people like Bruce Elliott McAree talk about the high performance biomechanics for many, many years, but no one had really span it to go, well, yeah, fair enough, but most people don't work with those players. Most people work with under 10 kids. What the hell do we do with them? So I did this presentation. It was a Prezi, and I delivered it, and it went down really well. And from that moment, the rest of the world started asking me to do things. So that was a real sliding doors moment. It's like, yeah, I did a few things in the UK, but pre-2009. But after 2009, the world phoned.
That's so important that we are able to apply biomechanical principles even at a young age, but not through the lens cap of coaching adults.
Yeah.
I'm so passionate about that as well, because the way we teach the serve at one level is completely different to the way we teach it at another level. And I think that's so important. Even, one thing Tennis Australia did really well back in the day was they took the technical app, and all the models were, of course, were of adults, and they put children in as models. And that was a very clever thing to add into an app back in the day. I can't believe Prezi was Prezi even around in 2009.
Yeah. I must have been one of the first early adopters of that, because no one else was doing it. So I did it, and then it blew people away. They're like, whoa, what is this? We have PowerPoint here with ITF templates. And I came on and went, now I'm going to do it slightly differently. And that was a bit of an innovative move by me, and it really worked. So, but yeah, you're right. Yeah, those are two moments for me in my career where I thought, like, my career accelerated because of it. One slowly through the university route, and one very fast through the international speaking and consultancy world.
And a great message for our listeners, just to reflect on your point of difference, finding that point of difference that you have as a coach and sharing that with the world as well. I love that. Thanks.
Well, and just on that, if I may, that's one of the I love to read like everyone does, and I like to listen to podcasts like everyone does. But you know what? If you want to be a key person of influence in the world, then you have to write. You have to have your own voice. You have to, and you'll write badly when you start. It'll be rubbish. I know. I've written 2 books. It's rubbish when you start, but just keep going, and you'll find some great sentences. You're like, wow, did I write that? That no one else is saying that. That's really interesting. I should share that in the world. But everyone is limited to like 140 characters on Twitter or Facebook, and so they just write statements or they copy other people's words. But when you start to write and have your own point of view, I always say write more than you read. It's a great lesson for people, that write more than you read, because then you become the person that people listen to and buy your stuff. But I know so many people that have read every leadership book in the world, and they're still not a leader. They still haven't changed that much. They've got knowledge and they've got nice stories and anecdotes, but they haven't really moved themselves on. So that's just a bit of a tip that I've always liked to give people.
On that, reflecting on my own journey of spending the last few years writing this book, What Makes a Great Coach, definitely when I first started writing, I would reread it and go, who the hell is going to read this? This is rubbish. There's nothing unique about this. But that's why it's called, I don't know, feels like manuscript 55 that I'm probably going to release to the world, because now I read it and I go, oh, that's good, or I'm proud of that sentence. And it takes practice, it takes time, and also it is nothing wrong with also getting help. If writing isn't your number one way of best communicating, one of the successes that I've had is in just recording speaking, because I'm a speaker.
For sure.
And then having either someone help dictate your words as well. So I love that. Content. You got to get it out there with your point of difference to the world.
People always want you if you have a point of view, and if you don't run with the crowd as well. If you challenge things, and it's not to be edgy, but it's just to be a thought leader, and that's what thought leaders do. They're constantly being creative with how they see the world and how they see their world, and they're trying to shake it up in a different way. And I've always tried to be slightly on the spectrum on that. So
our next question is our guiding question on the coaching podcast in 1 to a maximum of 3 words. What makes a great coach?
Okay, so the 3 words that I've chosen are pragmatic, regenerative, and stress tolerant. So let me just unpack those 3 words, for the listeners. Pragmatic in a sense that, coaching, certainly in my world, is a problem-solving industry. It's like, how do you keep making your athletes marginally better week on week, month on month, year on year? It's always about how can you help accelerate the learning, right? So, and I think people that are pragmatic, good coaches, they really are logical, realistic, progressive. They're not too abstract, actually. They're not jumping all the time from the new wave, the new trend, the new fad. They're athlete-centered. They're analytical. I always say some of the best coaches in the world should be like Sherlock Holmes. If you ever watch Sherlock Holmes, it's like that deductive reasoning. It's like there's a problem. Taking on, blah, 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 that's the answer. And I think some of the best coaches really can process quickly. They have like tennis IQ. We say people with IQ have like really quick spatial reasoning or abstract numbers with numbers. They really can do numbers fast in their head. I think good coaches can do that. It takes time to learn that. It's a real skill to master your trading coaching. But certainly the idea of being pragmatic and practical, it's not just reading from a book and being theoretical as a coach. You have to do things to improve people. It's all about shifting thinking, feeling, and behavior. It's always what a good coach is doing. Now, the second one is regenerative. And I truly believe that great coaches are constantly in never-ending improvement. And I think they do it slowly. Again, I don't think they jump from fad to fad, and they're not seduced by every new thing they hear. There's a barrier to learning to them, i.e. they'll sniff out the rubbish, the BS, but they're always evaluating their identity, significance, and competence. So I'll run through those 3 things. Their identity is, who am I? Who am I at my best? Who am I at my worst? How do I keep improving my ability to work with different types of athletes? Who do I want to become? That's my significance. How do I want to become a tour coach, or I want to work better with athletes, or I want to work more in the psychology side of the game, or I want to work more on the tour as an analyst, or where do I want to go? So this is who I am, but where do I want to be? And then what competence do I need to get there? And if that's the key word, right? It's like, it's like the lady that I said at the start of the podcast. She feels that she's more competent at improving strokes and tactics with her athletes. Therefore, she has the right to charge more money in order to be at the same level as her peers. And that creates a catapult effect on her life. So certainly people that are continually reflective, that they're having coaching conversations with themselves all the time. There's this inner dialogue to get better. Not good enough. We say chewing gum. We're chewing gum all the time as a coach. It's never quite good enough. And there's this kind of like pursuit of excellence and openness to experience, feedback to themselves, and they're always striving for learning opportunities. And I really believe that the best coaches in the world are regenerative in nature. And then my final one is stress tolerant. It's stressful, this world. There's long hours. There's parents that are on your back. It's you're losing players to other centres, other facilities, other academies. You're moving them on. It's one of the only jobs I can think of that when you do a good job, you lose your business. I don't think of many other industries where that happens, but there's academy politics and the stress of the role. If you're director of tennis, stress of rejection. Why do they go to that coach and not me? I want a chance. I can do a good job. There's just stresses all around you, and I really believe that some of the best coaches that stay in this industry and do a good job are the ones that are tolerant to that stress, and that are not destabilized by it. They're not thrown off their chair. And I know a lot of coaches that really struggle with the sport and they struggle with the industry because they find it all too overwhelming, all too much, all too encompassing. So people that can be stress tolerant, I think, really have the upper hand in having longevity in this career.
And finally, Simon, this is our opportunity to ask you, when you meet other successful coaches, what sparks your curiosity? What do you want to know more about?
Sure. So I've had the pleasure of meeting many CEOs, COOs, technical directors, performance directors, people that are in high leadership positions within the sporting industry. And the question I've always asked them, well, always a lot, is what separates them from others? Like, why you? Why you in that role? What led you to that role? And it often destabilizes a lot of people because they often get asked the question, how do you change culture, and what's your strategy, method of designing a strategy, and there's kind of pragmatic things. But I think when I talk to the person and say, what really makes you competent enough to do that role, it can really throw people. But you get different answers, right? My work ethic stands me aside. I work 90 hours a week and I love it. And some people say, well, my creative thinking, my ability to align common purpose around remotely among teams, it's solving systemic problems, it's to inspire and create a vision, it's to build strategy. A lot of people give the typical answers, but it's always interesting to see what those answers are. And then I often ask them a question that's linked to my three key things in coaching, which is, how do you remain stress tolerant when there are so many external forces out there to get you? Because everyone thinks that these jobs of these kind of high level individuals at senior leadership level and management level, everyone wants these jobs because they're high salaries. But let's be very clear, they're also highly stressful. You got people coming after you every minute of every day. And you really want to be in that position? Are you competent enough to deliver board reports to really smart, intelligent people every quarter, and they're slamming you for every decision you make, and you've got to deal with that, and then you've got legal cases coming in every day, and these jobs are tough, and you want to be careful what you wish for sometimes when you're envious of these people, because they're not all roses, I can tell you. So, and then the final thing I always ask them is, I always think this is the most interesting one, is like, what did you learn from each of your roles? And what was the cumulative impact of that on you? So have you changed through the roles that you've done? And that's always interesting to hear people's answers, like, I learned a lot about finance and budgeting. I learned about board level management there. I learned about scanning the rest of the world, or what everyone else is doing for research in order to bring it into my department. I looked at the hiring and firing and turnaround management and consultancy hiring in order to do reviews. So, when you hear of these people and what they do in order to jump ship, and what did they learn when they jumped ship? Because when you jump ship into a different organization, you'll be embedded into the culture of that organization, and then you take that with you, and then you drop that into the next one, but then you learn from that one. And the cumulative impact of that really makes these people tour de forces in what they do. So the competence hierarchy of high performing leaders is to me very interesting to kind of unpack.
Tour de forces. I love it, Simon Wheatley.
The French.
Fantastic. What messages keep showing up in your life?
Some of the messages that are coming to me right now is we're in a state of something that's really current is that we're a lack of coaches in the world. So the coaching workforce is diminishing. There are less and less people qualifying as tennis coaches. So that's something that Tennis Australia has spoken to me about. The UK has a real issue with right now, and that's because of Brexit. So there's some political reasons. There's also some COVID reasons. And I think there's a digital revolution coming, which is also preventing maybe young people for moving into the coaching role. And I'm really worried for our profession. I mean, I'm really worried because there are other things like pickleball and padel coming at us 100 miles an hour. And I'm not sure. And sometimes I do believe we're all corks bobbing along in the ocean, driven by social change that we really can't do much about because these external forces are there, and we have to just go with the movement. So one of the challenges I'm thinking about all the time is, how do we keep making our profession attractive for the younger generation, and how do we keep the older generation in it? It'd be interesting to see your thoughts on this. One of my hypotheses, and it's an hypothesis, is that one of the reasons why younger people aren't going into coaching as a full-time role, might be they're 18, 19, they do it part-time because good cash as a student, but as a career, is that the digital revolution, the digitalization of money, as really it means that coaching now is a role that you will earn less money than you would maybe 20, 30 years ago. And look, everyone knows that. It was a cash in hand job, right? You're $30 for a lesson, and, does the tax man see all of that? Well, we know he doesn't. And now you can't hide money. It's one of the reasons why if you've tried to hire a builder or a plasterer or an electrician or a plumber and they send you the invoice, you're like, Jesus, these guys are charging more money than me. How is that possible? They were the working tradesmen, and they were the good value for money to hire a painter for the day. Now it's because you just can't hide money anymore, and that's right. Of course, it's right that you can't hide money, and it's right that we pay our taxes and contribute to society. But the problem is with that is that if you earned $40,000 20 years ago, maybe you paid $6,000 in tax, but now you have to pay $12,000. Therefore, you're actually worse off doing the role than you were 20, 30 years ago. And people aren't stupid; they know that. They know they can earn way more money in a way easier way in other industries. I mean, there are just so many more jobs available to young people now that I don't necessarily. So in Denmark, they have this problem. They just cannot qualify tennis coaches in Denmark. It's not seen as a credible career. It's seen as a kind of a get you through university, have a bit of pocket money and spare change. So they have to recruit from abroad all the time. They really struggle to recruit coaches and qualify coaches. And I'm worried that that's a trend that could be followed by the rest of the world. So that's something that's coming up quite a lot.
It is something that we need to focus on too, isn't it? I mean, we need to put energy into that and solving that problem, because it is a great profession. But I remember even when I was in my 20s, someone would say, "What do you do?" I say, "I was a tennis coach." And they go, "Oh," I'm like, what else do you do? Like, that can't be what you do full time. So I'm sure with the types of workshops that you deliver, and we have to ignite passion. I mean, it is about igniting something that often is there, but maybe it's dormant, or maybe it's also thinking of stretching that reach of what a defined tennis coach is.
Yeah.
As well.
Yeah. And I also think we need to sell the earning capacity in the career, and I don't think we've done a very good job at that, because I'll tell you a story. This was a really nice story. I was at Birmingham Edgbaston Priory. You probably know it well, and it's where the tournament happens. And there was a young female coach. She's at university in America, a good player. She's studying law in America, and she came back. She was doing some coaching in the summer, and I said to her, "Hey, Kate, what are you going to do when you finish? You going to be like coaching?" She said, "Yeah, I love coaching." I said, "You're going to be coach full time?" She went, "Kidding, aren't you?" Like, I was like, "Oh, okay. What do you mean?" She went, "No, I can start. My starting salary in America as a lawyer be $100,000. It's like, as far as I can see, the more coaches can charge as fast as they can around the world, the more chances we have at attracting more people into the profession. So instead of you saying, 'Oh, a tennis coach, if you come and work at my tennis club, you can earn $30,000 a year,' like, no, you could be earning $100,000. Problem is with that is, of course, who pays for that? It's the client, and therefore you have to upgrade the fee to a significant amount. But it doesn't really change in the last 30 years. Like, I remember when I left my role, and I was working at East Gloss Tennis Club here in Cheltenham, and my hourly rate was like £30 an hour. When I left the LTA, I phoned up. I said, "Look, if I want to coach full time again, because I wasn't sure what I wanted to do, what would be my hourly rate?" He said, £30 an hour. I said, "But Steve, I was here 15 years ago, and it was £30 an hour." He went, "Yeah, hasn't gone up. It's just absolutely plateaued." So, like, how on earth is that possible? So you have an industry in coaching where everyone thinks it's quite good because you're hitting tennis balls. So, oh my God, you're lucky to be paid $30, $40 an hour. But the reality is that the world has changed, and the cost of living crisis is real. So how on earth are we going to entice more people into the profession if we pay them so averagely? It's not badly, because there are other jobs that are paid badly, but it's average now. It's not above average, and that's the problem.
So what creative solutions do you see to solve this problem?
Yeah, and look, I don't say I confess to having all the answers. It's a new problem. I think it's been since COVID, especially because a lot of part-time, and this happened in the Netherlands. In the Netherlands, there were a lot of part-time coaches doing under 20 hours a week. So what happened is that when COVID came, they found other part-time jobs that could pay them similar amounts of money that could do their 20 hours a week, and they haven't come back. Now, maybe they slowly will, and it'll just kind of even itself out, but maybe it won't. And the Dutch aren't sitting on their laurels and saying, "Well, we'll wait." That they go, "No, we have to put on more courses, we have to reduce the price of education." One of the things that I think is really interesting is there is a barrier mostly around the world to perhaps the price of the qualification. It's not an expensive barrier. It's not like college in America where it's extortionate fees per year, but it's not nothing either for a young person, 17, 18, 19, 20-year-old. So one of the ideas that I think would be interesting to play around with was the idea of a loan system where coaches could apply to do a course and not have to pay up front, but they could do it for free and then pay back later on once they start earning enough money. I think that would take a big investment from the governing body, but wow, if you don't invest in your people, you have no workforce, and then what does the future of tennis coaching look like? So that could be, and that happens in the university system in the UK. You apply for a loan and you pay it back when you have a job and you're earning enough money, and then the amount is really minimal to pay back. So it's not a big deal. But that might encourage more people, and then they might go, well, you know what, I'm up for this. This is great. I think people have more chance. I don't think we should devalue this. That money should still go to the provider of the education. They need to pay for expertise. But if we can create an entry route in, which is subsidized for everyone, and then granted for everyone, it's a grant, a subsidy, and a loan. I think then we may have more people going, yeah, I'll do that, because it's not a huge investment when they're young up front.
Did you ever, as a coach, you talk about being stress tolerant? Did you ever have a time where you thought, no, I'm gonna leave this industry. This isn't for me?
Yeah, mainly through bad management, bad boss. Like it really is toxic, when you have a relationship with a boss that's just not good. It's I think that's more stressful than anything, and there's always responsibility on you and them to collaborate and to make it functional at the best. It'll never be optimal, but it could be minimally functional, and I think that's where I've probably been most stressed. When I've wanted to affect change, and there's too much red tape and barrier and rhetoric around policy change, and it takes things too long. That's one of the things I've loved about being on my own right now, is that things can happen so much faster when you're working on your own. Okay, it's not always as collaborative, it's not always at a scale, but in saying that, I'm speaking to more coaches. I think in the last 12 months, Emma, I've spoken to over, I think 80,000 coaches or something in the last year. I mean, it's I've never spoken to that many people in 14 years at the LTA, but in less than 12 months, I was able to really scale out my content and my workshops. So yeah, certainly for me, stress. I've been stressed at work when I felt that I wasn't wanted or I wasn't used to my No, it wasn't wanted. I wasn't used to my maximal effect, and that there's always this. I don't think it's a boys' culture at the LTA. I think it's deeper than that. I think it's an ex-players culture, which is actually more dangerous. There really is like, well, if you haven't played the game to a high level, sorry, you're not in our gang. And I think disclusion is one of the most easiest ways to bully people. And I don't think necessarily that it's a healthy climate that when you're in organizations that have that kind of disclusion for individual intelligence in tennis. So yeah, viewpoint diversity is the most important diversity in my opinion, and accessing all the intelligence you can to optimal effect is one of the fastest ways of improving organizations and people. So that's always been stress for me, and I've had to suck it up and I've had to deal with that. But it's not been easy, I won't lie.
So what about outside of tennis? I know you've had the opportunity to speak to amazing performance leaders, and whether it be a business or even another sport outside of tennis. Could you share a story around a moment that someone came into your life that you went, oh, wow, that's different, or that's unique, or here's a different way I can do things?
Look, one of the I guess there's two stories that come to mind on that. I was really impressed with a gentleman called Peter Keane. Peter Keane was ex-UK performance director, so he wasn't a tennis guy at all. He wasn't, but he was a very, very smart guy. And he what I learned from him was to see the issue, see the problem, and zoom out from it from afar, and really look at the issue in a different way. So he was someone that was very analytical, very, very what was the word I would say? It was like a philanthropist now. Actually, he helps organizations of all types, and he had a really smart brain around problem solving and a really different way of looking at things financially, a really different way of looking at things versus principles. So, as a practical example, we had performance directors come into the LTA and do strategy documents, and he said, I want to zoom out from strategy. Culture eats strategy for breakfast was his saying, and I believe that as well. And I learned from him that by consulting with the people, which I'd never seen before, and he went around the country and he consulted with everyone, and I was so impressed by. I mean, he really was a remarkable man, and the way he was able to hold the room and to engage the romantic rebels and the outright terrorists. That was a real skill, man. And I don't have that skill yet. I'm working on that all the time, to go, when someone blatantly disagrees with you in front of your face, to be stress tolerant and to be able to deal with that. And one of the things I learned from him is that he was amazing at this. And I think he said to me that he learned this from from Freud, or was it Carl Rogers, this eminent psychologist, and he said one of the things you do when someone's ranting or someone has a different viewpoint to you, it's not always about ranting, is that you really listen to what they're saying. You don't try and react, you don't interrupt, you don't try and win the argument. It's the worst thing you can do, but you pull back and you then summarize and paraphrase what they've said back to them. People love that because it shows that you've listened to them. And people like nothing more than to be shown that you listen to what they have to say. And he used to do it all the time. And it's not until he told me that he was doing it that I watched him doing it. I went, oh, that's a real skill that you've learned there. That's not just organic. You've learned to sit back, stay calm, listen to what they say, deeply watch and stay focused with his eyes into the eyes of the opponent. And then quickly say, okay, so if I understand you correctly, what you're saying is this, and you're frustrated because these things have happened in the past. One of the things that could be a solution to that is if we do more of this, is have I understood your point correctly? A, it gives you time to think also about your response, but B, it really shows the individual that you're listening. So that's just a really practical example of something I learned from good leaders they do when they're a target to the audience. Well, look, I had a mentor that was a business consultant his whole life, and he was someone that would work at high-level board management. So, and he would often be an executive coach to executive directors and, Mayfair in London and Coca-Cola and KPMG. I mean, PricewaterhouseCoopers, these are big multi-organizations. And he would deliver multiple change programs for these. Changing Change was his big program and within these organizations. And one of the things that I learned from him was to engage expertise in a way that really makes people feel like it's facilitative leadership. That was probably what I learned more, rather than kind of autocratic leadership, the hierarchical down. It wasn't like, I'm the boss, do what I say and get in line, man, because that's what you need to do. And he really talked about the leader being around the table rather than at the top of the table. And look, it's all the cliche things we kind of know now, but I didn't know it back then. It was something that was really interesting to me to say, look, great leaders listen a lot and they'll engage a lot, and they'll say they're wrong, and they'll admit their mistakes, and they'll ask for your advice, and they'll want you to manage upwards a lot, and they're constantly wanting you to push them and challenge them. They're seduced by praise as well. So praise is both ways. You always want praise from them. You're doing a good job. You're my soldier. But you have to give them praise for what they do, and that's a reciprocal act. And reciprocal praise and encouragement is something you need to do in any working environment. And praise is given so rarely by people. It's always looking at people through a deficit lens, which always worries me and troubles me in coaching. It's like, you're not doing a good enough job. You can do that better. You can work harder. You can come into work early. It's like a machine gun of negative perception on people. And it could be reality, not just perception, but to find the good in people and be a dolphin trainer and keep feeding the fish when they're doing well is something that I'm a big advocate of.
Mm-hmm. Fantastic. Well, Simon, that we could chat forever. You and I about coaching, and I would love to do it again just for fun, not only for the benefit of all the amazing listeners. You have a brain that I always love to listen to what you have to say. You take the science and you take the art and you bring it together as a coach. So I'm so grateful for that. And this episode's reminded me of like 2 of the 6 human needs. One, significance, this positive reinforcement, and the other one was belonging, that inclusive environment to feel like you belong, that you really reinforce in a pragmatic way. So thank you for being a coach, and thank you for making me a better coach. So how can people find and learn more about you?
Oh, well, first of all, those words are really nice. So thank you very much. I'm on LinkedIn, Simon Wheatley. You'll see my big round face, I'm sure. And then I'm also on Instagram, Wheatley Tennis 2022. And then Facebook is on there. I just haven't got to TikTok yet. I don't think I can do it, Emma. I don't think I can do it. I'm going to stay on those 3 platforms for now. But yeah, if people want to reach out in any way possible, then I would love to connect with people. I'm a deeply connected person. I'm a very extrovert, and I love co-creation with everyone around the world. So please do reach out. And listen, Emma, I'm so pleased to see you doing so well in the States and around the world. You've pivoted into a different direction, and I'm just watching you flourish, and it's really nice. So I'm really pleased for you.
All right. Well, thank you for those words as well, Simon. Everyone, thank you so much for listening.
The Coaching Podcast is sponsored by Transition Coach for Athletes, a global coaching, mentoring, and US placement service. The service helps athletes navigate the often challenging world of choosing your best college fitness performance. Visit www.transitioncoachforathletes.com That's the number 4. If you, company, are interested in sponsoring the coaching podcast, reach out to info@emmadoyle.com.au.
In 1 to a maximum of 3 words, what makes a great coach?
Oh, it's one of those questions where you're going to constrict me to actually
Yes.
to actually say the 3 words. Okay, I think someone that's resilient, because it's tough. It's hard working with people. The second word I would say is they have to have a level of leadership. People have to follow them. When you're a good coach, you're a magnet to people. So I think leadership and following is something really, really important. And I think the other word is, I think just role model. There's 2 words, I apologise, but if you don't give a sense of aspiration for people, if you don't actually demonstrate, I really believe attitude reflects leadership, and if the leadership that you give, the attitude of your players will mimic that and role play that into their hands.